Let's say you're trying to find a new line of work. Hey, folks, I know it's been a little while, but a friend had a question. I realized it's one of these things I've helped a lot of people do, done it myself, and that it's not really unique to game developers. Thought I'd share it as I know it might be affecting some more people out there. Basic scenario here is that she has been a school teacher and is feeling very displeased about the job, trying to figure out what else she could do and how to even begin or navigate that process. And again, this is something where I was able to bring some suggestions since I've helped a lot of people maneuver their way either into big companies, out of big companies, into startups, into making their own games independently, into doing freelance, in and out between these transitions, in and out of research vectors and so on. And again, early in my career was lots of zigging and zagging, which is part of why I can help navigate this for other people. And so a few general tips. Some of these are going to be very just tactical, practical, some maybe a little woo-woo, but I assure you all of them can be useful and hopefully will be useful for you. So first at the high level, speaking with the practical, part of it's really helpful to get specific about what it is you dislike about the current job. And I say this because if you're not careful, you're just going to kind of roll the dice on all the factors and fail to leverage that you may have advantages. So if we look at this example of someone who's been a school teacher, and in this case, I believe a public school teacher. Well, so for example, if her annoyance is that she's having just a really frustrating time working with children, perhaps she can apply some of her same skill sets, mentalities, and strengths to become a trainer of adults, right? To teaching in a different kind of setting like that, to do curriculum design for various other kind of training that grown-ups go through. If the challenge has just been the bureaucracy, the challenges and the friction that arise from being a public school teacher, perhaps exploring can some of her same skills and strengths apply to teaching in a private school. Now, maybe it's not what she wants to do, may or may not be, but it's again looking at, can we still leverage my past experiences, which tends to give me an advantage on what I can be paid, on my opportunities, on getting me past some extra rungs of the ladder into the interview process. Or so another example of this, and again, perhaps it's just, I felt some of this when I tried to teach into classrooms as opposed to individually. If part of what bothers her is just classroom management, of just having 30 kids is overwhelming, perhaps, is there a way that private lessons, private tutoring might make sense? There's different versions of this that can be explored, especially if it's a skill area related to what people do for their college admissions, if it's related to things that families who maybe have more means want and often need additional training and tutoring in mathematics, in various kind of science fields, again, help them set apart. Part of what I'm going to do as a programming instructor, occasionally I'll pick up a youth client, but it is something people will build a whole side model out of. Okay, well, if I have teaching skills and enough patience to work with kids, I just don't want to do the behavior management of 30 human beings bouncing off the walls. That's another version that can still take that sort of strength. Now, someone may figure out that they just need to push a huge reset, right? That's just flat out, all of this is bad, all of this is frustrating. And it may not be as simple as one thing can be replaced. That may be part of the finding. In which case, what I try to do, and again, this is where I think is a matter of, like I say, it can sound a little woo-woo. There's a couple things that have to do with untangling our thoughts about this stuff. One of which is kind of coming to terms with accepting that this needs to change, while simultaneously not getting so twisted about the fact that it's our current situation that it prevents us from being able to move forward. And so what I mean by that is to not, accept and get too comfortable in, because I had to, as a matter of survival, rationalize, talk myself into, this is the spot I can find myself in, this is where my experience all led me to, this is maybe where my degree is in, so here I find myself. We had to get a certain level of comfortable with that to stay in it. We need a certain level of discomfort to move us out of it. But the way to look at that is to not think of it as an all or nothing, but to think of it as a gradient to move in, that it has served us up to this point pretty well, that we're grateful to have had that as it's been. Now, how can we build on that to take our opportunities somewhere else? Another version of this, and again, sort of now go back to practical to kind of bounce back and forth. There's a variety of kinds of meetups in the areas, and I tend to find these through meetup.com being one of the easy answers. Facebook groups have these sort of things if you're into that. But it's something where programmers have meetups, designers have meetups, photographers have meetups, different people in different walks of life have gatherings. And it's because they can kind of meet eye to eye, they can kind of network a little bit, they can kind of sometimes swap stories, but it's often just hanging out as people. And it's an opportunity to find and talk to other people, to figure out, what do you like or dislike about what you're doing? What was that path like? How essential or not essential does it seem to be to have a credential related to what you're doing? Obviously, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer. That's a whole certain path. There's a lot of other fields, though, and this is where it tends to open up the search space. There are so many fields for which there is no obvious degree. They may or may not even care if you have a college degree. It might help. But it's not as if someone who has a computer science degree becomes a programmer, someone who gets a mechanical engineering degree becomes a mechanical engineer. There's a lot of lines of work where they just need somebody who is willing to follow instructions, who is reasonable talking to other people, who's open to learning some new things. a lot of different vectors in life open up when you stop trying to think in terms of, well, because I had a square degree, I have to fit into a square hole. Because I had a circle degree, I have to fit into a circle hole. Again, go back to our kind of what I'm calling woo-woo, our untangling our thoughts kind of side. It can still be a thing of realizing, okay, well, is what I have a background in something that both A, reflects some psychological advantages, some things I know about myself, or things that to the outside world that recognize me. And this is a common example for this sort of thing, right? It's part of why there used to be so many business consultants actually came from physics degrees. It was people who know how to break things down into steps, who know how to be patient, who know how to kind of break down problems and be able to articulate and design and explain those problems visually and so on. Those are skill sets that might be able to translate. If there's things about your background, your interest, your skills, your previous work experience that point to things that help you feel good about what you're doing, to things that help you feel like they are aligned, they're low friction for what you're doing, can you lean that direction? And this is, again, part of also then sizing up why I tried to start from what was the thing that bothered you most, because you can replace that. Part of the mental game, too, is acknowledging and recognizing there's some grass is greener thing. Every single job has its downsides. Every single career path has its frustrations, its imperfections. And to recognize that we're making trade-offs between one downside for other downsides. It's not that we're going to find something that has no downsides. We figure out which one plays best with the shape of us and what we want out of our lives at this next stage of what we're doing. That makes sense? Because it's not like we're going to find something there's no friction. It's always going to be something, but it's a choice of, well, I really want to be able to travel more. This is a job that leverages the need to me shuffling around. Or I really wanted to meet more people. Or, I've actually seen the opposite of this. I had a relative some years ago where he was a consultant in a situation where he worked for a bigger company. That bigger company would bounce him around between different companies. And so every single time, maybe it was every few weeks, every month or so, he'd have to do a commute in a different direction to a different place. Never really got roots to meet the coworkers because he knew he was kind of coming in and out. Maybe they kind of looked at him as an outsider, didn't really enjoy that. He didn't like the consistency. He wished he had consistency. So for his next line of work, right, what he disliked about it was that constant box shake. So he next found a way to be embedded using those same sort of skills that he had, and I think in this case maybe security, IT audit, something like that, in a company doing it on their behalf, so he had a consistent set of coworkers. Speaking of which, I also want to acknowledge in there as a major factor, because it can be in our brains, all we really know sometimes, right? It's a bit like when a baby cries and you got to figure out as an adult, is it hungry? Did it poop itself? Is it bored? Is it trying to sleep and can't? What's going on? We got to get a diagnose, right? Kind of do some investigative games based on how long it's been since I last ate or fed, or do you smell something? You're looking for clues. Same thing for ourselves. We can tell when we're unhappy. That's step one. Step two is a bit of detective work to figure out, why are we unhappy? What's it about? Because every now and then, it may be something as simple as, not to diminish the complexity and challenge of it's still going to be a wiggle. Maybe the problem isn't actually the job at all. Maybe the problem isn't the work. Maybe the problem isn't teaching history or teaching business classes for high schoolers. Maybe the problem isn't what we thought it was. Maybe we're unhappy in that job because of the people around us, because of our immediate coworkers and who they happen to be, because of our boss, our manager. That can be a huge factor. Many years ago, a lifetime ago now for some people watching this channel, I had some experiences at a much bigger company. And for the rest of my life, I've had some younger people ask me, what was my experience at the company like? And I always give them an asterisk. My experience wasn't so bad, right? But it's, as a 9,000 person institution, people's experience is going to be vastly tilted in a very real way based on if they had a bad manager, bad boss, bad coworkers. It's about like people's experience in college or people, where they're living. It comes down to who are the 5 or 6 people they regularly interact with determines a huge part of our work. And I mention this because if part of the issue is just who my immediate circle is, you may not be in control of not having those coworkers or not having that boss. But perhaps if you just did the exact same job at some other school, at some other institution, right? If you were doing car sales and you realize you didn't actually hate car sales, you just hated Jimmy. You got to get away from Jimmy. Somewhere else need car sales? Probably. So consider the possibility, is there a human element to it that's part of what's grating on you? And recognizing that there's many different reasons why we may be unhappy, because we can target and articulate and specify to ourselves, I'm grateful I had this spot so far. I want to move myself in another direction towards a continuum. If I identify specifically what was unhappy about it, what was my problem with it, I can better take those steps. I will acknowledge this has been part of one of the trade-offs on my own path as an educator and my own decision to teach independently, having tried teaching off and on in university in a couple different cases, taught classrooms of school kids, etc. What a difference it makes that I am in a position to choose my students, to choose my clients, to choose who I work with. When I find myself in a situation where it could be 1 out of 25, it could be 1 out of 30, if that person just does not want to be there, and everyone can tell, that person can tell, I can tell, all the other students can tell, it is such a drain on my existence and everyone else's. Versus when I teach independently, I can say, hey, you know what? This is not a negative judgment. This is not anything bad about you. I am not the right teacher for you. I wish you all the best in finding someone that's the right fit for what you need. What a difference that makes versus when I'm teaching for an institution, when I'm teaching for a school, I have no say over that, right? I don't have that choice. So it's also part of what some people actually prefer about the freelance life and juggling. Granted, there's uncertainty around that, especially during tumultuous times. Though, as I often try to remind people, small boats get tossed around in the storms, big boats break in half. So if you're small, if you're agile, if you're doing freelancing stuff, again, you can choose your clients, and maybe it may not pay as well or as steadily or as predictably as some bigger company roles. Occasionally, though, that's worth the trade-off for some people of getting to choose. I do want to work with that person. I no longer want to work with that person. Having that say, that autonomy is a big factor in our happiness. And this is something I still always have to remind myself of consciously. As part of why I was probably the last thought here. Again, it's probably back to the woo-woo side, a little practical, little mental untangling. The environments that we're in have a hold in how we think about things. So what I mean by this, right, is if you go to the gym, you're going to be thinking about doing certain things. If you go to your bedroom, you're probably going to get a little sleepy. You go to the TV room, you're going to be thinking about which show you want to watch. Go to the kitchen, what food you want to make. That's kind of how we're wired. And so if you need a change of thinking in a new direction, a new possibility, opening up your vision to what else is out there that you haven't already been seeing, I cannot stress enough the value, the practical value, as much as this is the mental entangling, practical value of go somewhere you're not usually going. Go visit a park you don't usually go to. Go sit in the library. Go walk a different direction in the town or something. Just go for a walk. Get out of your usual space. Because part of what happens is when we are in our usual spaces, as our routines and our habits have established for us, inevitably, our heads, just like we do for the kitchen and for the gym and for something else, like a golf course or whatever, our heads connect to, I only can see things the way I've seen things when I'm in this space. That's what I do. That's what I do at my computer. That's what I do when I'm, I don't know, laying on the couch on my phone or something. It's tied together. And so if you need to take your thoughts new places, that first thought I might suggest is use your thinking to steer your body, to be somewhere else, to do something different. And I think it's going to help loosen your possibilities or loosen the tight hold you have of only being able to see the world the way that it is, as opposed to the very, very broad, almost daunting possibility, the sheer volume, the number of things you could be doing that are different than what you're currently doing. If you're unhappy with where you're at, cannot urge you enough, look into what else you could be doing. And again, hopefully these tactics have helped, practical and mental entangling side. Anyway, that's it for now. Again, this is not really about game development in particular. I know it's been a well set of videos. I want to catch up with you all, share a tip there that might be useful for somebody out there who's trying to navigate that, including, and I keep throwing in one more thing, but I've seen a lot of folks who, as game industries had a really rocky, I think 1,500, 15,000, 20,000, whatever, a crazy number of layoffs, unfortunately. And granted, it also depends where we draw on the dial of, are we including gambling industry, including casual free-to-play web and phone and whatever else. But a lot of folks have been struggling at, okay, well, they can't find a job that's exactly the shape of what they've done before. And I think part of this, the same lens can apply to thinking outside, use these words out loud, outside the box a little bit, of imagining what other roles they could be fulfilling that might still be a match for their skills, as long as they identify and be specific about what it is they didn't like about it. And one part of what we might dislike about a job is how hard it is to find an opening in it, or how poorly it pays, or how inconsistently we can stay in that role, etc. Those are real factors we can choose and navigate when we're sizing up what we'd like to do next, as opposed to where we've been having a difficult time, right? To recognize that maybe I'm just not in the ideal place for this time, and recognizing, too, it's common in game industry or a lot of creative fields like music creation and writers and so on, will phase in and out over the years of engaging in it commercially. That's valid. That's a normal part of the path. Don't stress that. It doesn't mean you're permanently out of it. It just means that for the time being, you got to find something else. This will really stop. This will really be the end of it. Thanks so much. Catch you one more time. Bye for now.